إلهنا ما أعدلك مليك كل من ملك لبيك قد لبيت لك لبيك إن الحمد لك إلهنا ما أعدلك مليك كل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ربنا زدنا علما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'd like to welcome everyone to the session of A Woman's Guide to Hajj. Today we will be discussing pertinent rulings and regulations regarding our sisters and what our Hajj will look like, how it might differ from the brothers. So to get into it, inshallah, today we'll be focusing on a few things. Firstly, the women's ihram. It's actually such a vast topic that we've gone ahead and had it in a completely separate session, inshallah. So women's ihram, inshallah, we'll be covering in a separate session. Then we move on to differences in the ritual worship. This is the main part of our presentation today, where we're going to talk through and walk through how a woman's Hajj and how our performance of the Hajj rites differs from the brothers, inshallah. And lastly, we'll talk about menstruation during Hajj, which I know can be a great concern for many women, many sisters who know that they will be having their menses during those days, have concerns regarding it, inshallah. So I'll go into some explanation of that as well. So to start, I just want to once again remind everyone that we will have on this coming Tuesday on May 7th, a special session specifically talking about the ihram, specifically talking about what to do, what you can't do, what you can wear, what you can't wear, and all of the different aspects of ihram. So if you want to go for that, the link is on there, as well as the code. Inshallah, that will be May 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern, so New York time, inshallah, with Sister Khola. Very informative. Please do attend that as well. But for the purpose of today, I'm going to skip the ihram since it will be covered later and go straight into the actual Hajj rites. So how do our ibadat, how do our rituals and worship during the Hajj differ from the brothers? So getting straight into it, one of the first things where we see a difference from how we perform versus how the brothers perform is in reciting the talbiyah. So when we recite the talbiyah, many scholars have said that the talbiyah should not be recited out loud. Rather, it should be done quietly, and so only that you yourself or perhaps the woman next to you can hear it, and so that none of the passing men or the men in the vicinity can hear it, out of fear of fitna and attention. If there is no fear of fitna, so for example, you're in your own hotel room or you're in a private space where there's no passing by of non-mahram men, then she may recite the talbiyah out loud. And lastly, regarding the timing of the talbiyah, this is the same for us and for the brothers, but just as a reminder, it will start from the time when you enter the ihram, inshallah, until you've completed the stoning on the day of Eid, the day of sacrifice. You've done the stoning of Jamrat al-Aqaba, the big Jamarat. I know a lot of this has been covered already during the 5 days of Hajj, so some of this is a little bit of a revision, but I think the more the merrier, inshallah. And of course, the talbiyah is written down there for you to look over. So just as a reminder, the main point that we want to take away with the talbiyah is that we should still be reciting the talbiyah. There's no prevention of us reciting. We should just recite in a way that it is only ourselves, only we can hear it, right? So the normal speaking voice, we might bring it down a little bit so that way there's no one passing by, or if there's other brothers, for example, are on the bus and there's other brothers on the bus, they're not able to hear it and things like that. Next, getting into tawaf. So the tawaf, I like to break it down into both similarities and differences because there's essentially with the Hajj rites, we assume that they're all the same except for where there's points where we differ, right? But the tawaf, we have quite a lot of differences from the brothers. So firstly, I'll talk about how it's similar. It's similar in that just like anyone who's going on Hajj or anyone who's making tawaf, we use that time to make dua, to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recite Quran, recite the stipulated dua, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, etc. Regarding touching the black stone, kissing it if it's possible. It's just like for the brothers, they are allowed to do that. So too can the sisters do that, as well as for the Yemeni corner, but with the condition that you're not going into a crowd of men to do so. So if there was an opening where there isn't a large crowd of men, kind of blocking it off and you'd have to go through them, then it would be okay for you to do that. And to actually go ahead and kiss the black stone. There is no, women are not forbidden from kissing the black stone, nor are they forbidden from kissing the Yemeni corner. However, we are told to be aware and not to throw ourselves into a crowd of men where we might get hurt. Similarly, just like a man can speak during tawaf, a woman can also speak during tawaf with the added requirement that this should be benefiting speech. This should be necessary speech, right? Like, for example, you're coordinating with your family member about, where they are, if you've lost them or something like that. Similarly, there's a karahat, or an undesirability of eating during tawaf, or of if you need to use the bathroom, you're told to go use the bathroom, make a fresh wudu. If you need to pass wind, you'd go and make a fresh wudu as well. Things like that. So the same way it would be undesirable for a brother, it is also undesirable for us as sisters. Now to the differences. So one of the first and major differences in the tawaf between a sister and between a brother is that the brothers are told for the first 3 circuits of the tawaf to do ramal, or to jog. That's where they basically are moving their shoulders in a very exaggerated way. So when you get there, inshallah, you will see some of the brothers while they're doing the first 3 circulations that they're really moving their shoulders and jogging. Whereas we have been told that to keep our pace, we walk throughout. We won't do the jogging in the first 3 tawafs, in the first 3 circuits of the tawaf. Next, the irtibad, the uncovering of the right shoulder. So again, for the brothers in ihram, of course, they're told they go ahead and uncover their right shoulder. Of course, I think this goes, it's a bit of a common sense thing, but of course we're not uncovering our right shoulder, just because in our normal wear we don't uncover our shoulders, and so of course in Hajj we won't be doing that as well. Similar point that I spoke about before, but I'll just go ahead and reiterate. We should not try to get as close to the Kaaba as possible, because what ends up happening is that there's usually a crush of men and we have to kind of go through them. And if anyone has been on Hajj or on Umrah before, you know that the mataf, when it gets full, and of course we're going on Hajj, so it will be extremely full. When it gets full, you're likely brushing shoulders with other people. So the closer you try to get to the Kaaba, to the wall of the Kaaba, to the black stone, the more you're getting into that crowd, the more you're brushing shoulders with people who are not your mahrams and things like that. However, if it's a time when there's less crowd, then you may go close to the Kaaba. So the impermissibility isn't for touching the Kaaba or for kissing the black stone or for the Yemeni corner, anything like that. Of course, women are allowed to touch the Kaaba, but the issue comes in the fact that there's just so much rush, and there's oftentimes you end up getting pressed against non-mahram men. So to save yourself from that, you can actually try to do tawaf further out from the Kaaba. Similarly with the black stone, you're not going to try and go kiss the black stone every one of the 7 circuits. Just like a brother who was not able to go kiss the black stone, they would go and just wave to the black stone and kiss it from afar. The same way you can do that. That's called istinam, and you can do that from afar. That's not a problem. And then specifically regarding the menses, we'll go more into it with the tawaf, but just in general, it's better to form the tawaf as soon as possible when you get to Makkah, especially if you know that you're going to be getting your period, or you fear that you might be getting your period in those days. Then you would want to just go ahead and do your tawaf as soon as possible, so that way, you're not having that issue if you're now on your period and then talking about all of those rulings and regulations and things like that that come with being on the period. Next, sa'i. So with sa'i, I'm just as a quick reminder, this is where you have the for the the Hajis are walking 7 times between Safa and Marwa, and there's a certain portion in which the brothers run, or they jog rather, and this is called Ramal. This is a jogging that they do, and it's at this green light. So you might see in the image there's a little bit of a green light here. So nowadays they've denoted those areas with a green light, and so when you get to the green light, the brothers, they start their jog from there. As sisters, we should not be jogging. We should continue, just like in Tawaf, we should not be jogging. We should be continuing on in our normal walking pace. And inshallah, that is as rewarding for us as it would be for the brothers to jog. This is another point regarding menses, but I'll add it here and talk about it in more detail later, is that a woman does not have to be clean from her monthly period in order to perform sa'i. She can perform sa'i while she is menstruating. And inshallah, I'll go more into that later. Next is the night of Muzdalifah. So overall, the Hajj rites are the same for men and women, and there's just a few points where we differ. So for example, in Muzdalifah, right, spending the night in Muzdalifah on the eve of the 10th, so after Arafat, we move to Muzdalifah, it's just as much a part of Hajj for women as it would be for the men, right? We leave from Arafat, we do exactly as, our brothers are doing, in that we would leave after sunset, and we'd get to Muzdalifah and we pray our Maghrib, and then we pray our Isha combined, meaning in the same time. And then, we do all of the different ibadat that are done in Muzdalifah that have already been covered in the 5 days of Hajj. The difference comes in when it comes time to leave Muzdalifah. Now, again, if calling back to that 5 days of Hajj webinar, we spoke about how when we leave Muzdalifah after Fajr time, but some scholars have actually given permissibility for women as well as for children and for elderly people or people with who might have some weakness or disability to leave before the Fajr prayer, to leave at night or to leave before the Fajr prayer. And the reason they've given this permissibility is due to the fear of crowding. So what happens is, of course, after Arafat, everyone goes to Muzdalifah, and then from Muzdalifah, obviously, everyone is leaving on to go to Mina. And so because everyone who is on Hajj is doing these acts at the same time, they can tend to be extremely, extremely, extremely crowded. So for people who fear those crowds, and the issues that come with being in big crowds, they have been given the permission to actually leave before Fajr or earlier from Muzdalifah. So they don't have to wait until the sun has come up and it's become bright. They can actually leave earlier. And this is proven from the Sunnah, alhamdulillah. However, of course, the Sunnah is to wait until after Fajr, after the sun has come up, to move on to Mina. So both of them are okay. If a woman was to take the rukhsa, take the permission that's been given, she's allowed to do that. And if she wants to fulfill the Sunnah of staying until Fajr, she has that option as well. And Allah knows best. And then the last ritualistic difference that we're going to see between brothers and sisters is that of shaving the head versus trimming the hair. So there's a whole, discussion to be had about what's better, shaving the head, trimming of the hair for the brothers. When it comes to us sisters, all of the scholars agree that the women should only trim their hair. So just because you're going on Hajj doesn't mean that you're, having to get bald. No, alhamdulillah. In fact, some of the scholars consider that a form of mutilation, right? So we should only be trimming our hair. The main conversation that we have now is, how much do I need to trim, right? Some people, they get, worried, did I trim enough? Am I actually out of ihram? Things like that. So there's a difference of opinion regarding how much a woman should trim. And I'll go through them, and then I'll mention what I believe would be the best way to go about it. So firstly, that there's no set measurement. Whatever she trims is sufficient, inshallah. So as long as she's trimmed, it's enough. Next is a finger span, which is about 1 centimeter. So you could just see like the top of your finger from the tip to the first line, right? Your fingertip, which comes out to about 1 centimeter. The third is that you'd have to trim that span of a fingertip or the 1 centimeter from 3 strands of hair on the head. So you could take like 3 different strands, fold them, and then measure out that fingertip or that 1 centimeter and cut there, and then you're out. And this is according to Imam Shafi'i. However, Imam Abu Hanifa, he says that you'd have to trim not just 3 strands, but actually you'd have to trim a quarter of the hair on your head. So if you were to look at all the hair on your head, you'd section it out, and whatever is 1/4, you would take the bottom of that, and then you could go ahead and measure out the finger span or the 1 centimeter and clip that, and then you're out of the state of ihram. And then lastly, this is the my recommendation to everyone, which I think is just the easiest way to go about it, is to join all of her hair together. So you can make like a pony or a braid and just take the ends of it. And then you would take from a fingertip from the end. And so the way I would, recommend measuring that is you can honestly just take your finger and wrap it around once, and that usually is enough. Give it a cut, and then inshallah you'll see that if you were to open up that one round, it ends up being around the 1 fingertip mark. So that is enough to get you out of the state of ihram, inshallah. But just as a reminder, the main difference here is that women, we will not be shaving our head, we will be trimming our hair, and the trimming should be about 1 centimeter, about 1 finger span. So next, we're going to move on to questions regarding the menstruation during Hajj. This is a very deep topic. I know there's a lot of concerns regarding the menstruation during Hajj, and the reason I say this is a very deep topic is because there's a lot of difference of opinion that the scholars have regarding different aspects. So I'm going to do my best to present everything in a concise and hopefully coherent way. And inshallah, during the question and answer session, if you have more questions and you have more specific scenarios to you, inshallah, I'll take those then. All right, so menstruation during Hajj. Firstly, what I want to mention here is that I think a lot of us sisters, we get very in our own heads and we get very upset, about getting our menses at certain points of the year, right? Like whether it's Ramadan or the last 10 nights of Ramadan, or when you're going for a trip, an Umrah trip, or going on Hajj, things like that. We get very in our own way. But the first thing I want to mention just off the bat is to remember that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen you actually. He's chosen you to have that, and it's quite an honor, right? Even in a hadith that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions that this is something that all of the daughters of Adam alayhi salatu have, or they go through, meaning this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for us, and we shouldn't be upset over it, and we shouldn't be blaming ourselves for anything, or really just I want to mention, like, it's not like a punishment of Allah or anything like that, where I've heard people say, unfortunately, things like that, where, oh, is Allah punishing me for my sins? That's why I can't pray at these days. No, this is a natural, phenomenon that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for us. And we're grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our bodies are able to function in the way that He subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for them to function. And just to add to that, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written out that you're meant to be in that state in those days if He's written it for you. So being happy with that and taking it in stride is inshallah more rewarding for us and even better for us, right? And so the same way that the brothers get reward for praying in those days, we get reward for leaving our prayer, or for fasting in those days, we get reward for not fasting, because we're obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're fulfilling what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked of us. So to go into it, the main thing that I want everyone to understand is that a woman in her menses, meaning when you have your period, you can do every single action of Hajj except for doing tawaf al-ifada, or doing the main tawaf that we have to do. So other to that, inshallah, you being on your period does not make it so that you can't perform Hajj altogether, or that you'd have to come back a different year, or that, that you have to miss your Hajj. No, you can still perform your Hajj, right? Without anything being taken away from it. The only thing is with the tawaf al-ifada, I'll, get more into details in a little bit, but there'll be some restrictions or some things that we have to work around. But overall, your Hajj will be done pretty normally. You'll be going to, not to go too much into the details of the, that we've already covered in past webinars, but you'll be going to Mina the same way as everyone else. You'll be going to Arafat the same way as everyone else will be going to Muzdalifah, doing the Jamarat. Everything else is the same. So firstly, just if you have that anxiety that you might be having your period in those days, I want you to know that that's okay. You'll still be able to perform your Hajj, inshallah. All right, so just getting into some of the actual masail, so some of the fiqh points to bring up here and the jurisprudence points to bring up here. How does a woman who is menstruating, how does she put on her ihram? She puts on her ihram the same way as anyone else would put on their ihram, meaning that the same restrictions that are on anyone else, they will be on you as well, right? The same the clothing that they'd want to wear, you'd want to wear as well. You'd be able to shower before getting in the same way. Then, prepare yourself exactly as you would. The only difference is that you'd also want to make sure that you're using something to for your bleeding, a pad or whatnot. And then you go ahead and make the niyyah of the ihram, and you've entered the ihram. Now over here, there is a nice note to mention, is that if you fear that you might not be able to complete the rituals of Hajj, like let's say for some reason your period spans like a very long time and you just think like you won't be able to make the Hajj itself, which again, I said you can do all of the rituals, it's just the tawaf, and we'll talk about the tawaf a little bit later. But if the fear is there for the tawaf getting missed or something like that, you can actually make your niyyah such that, oh Allah, I'm entering the state of ihram, and if I'm prevented from completing the Hajj, then my exit point for the ihram is wherever I'm prevented from it, right? And this is a beautiful exception that our religion gives us, where we can actually make this intention so that if for some reason something happens which prevents us from completing Hajj, we can actually exit our ihram without any issues, without any blame, because it was part of our niyyah that if I'm prevented, then I will exit ihram at the point at which I'm prevented. Now, if you're going into the to making your ihram, whether it's from the miqat or from the plane, etc., and you know that you're going to get your period in such a timing, or that perhaps you're already on your period, in such a timing that you won't be able to make the umrah, right? Like maybe you just started your period and you know it's going to run for the next 8 days or something, or the 10 days, and you won't be clear until after Hajj has already started, you can actually go ahead and put the ihram on for the intention of making Hajj ifrad. So just as a reminder, I don't want to go too much into the types of Hajj because we've covered them before, but just as a reminder, there are 3 types of Hajj. 2 of them, Qiran and Tamattu', require you to do Umrah first. There's one, which is Hajj ifrad, which does not require you to do Umrah. It's just the Hajj on its own. So if you're in a condition where you have like this, you know that you're not going to be able to make the Umrah, you can actually just go ahead and put the Ihram on as if you were amongst the people who live in Makkah and who only do Hajj Ifrad. The Hajj Qiran and Tamattu are for those who are coming from outside of Makkah. So, but you would go ahead and just adopt that Hajj Ifrad, so that way, because you're not going to be able to make the Umrah. There is one difficulty here, however, in that you're going to then be in ihram from now, like when you're putting it on, all the way till Hajj time, and obviously during the days of Hajj. And everyone else is obviously in the ihram because they're going to make the umrah, and then if they're doing tamattu', get out of it, right? But you'll be in the ihram the whole time, as if you were somebody who's doing Hajj Qiran, meaning in the ihram and not doing the umrah and not removing the ihram. So just to explain a little bit further, you won't have any issues of, okay, I can't do umrah, things like that, because you didn't make the intention for the umrah, but you will be in the ihram all throughout. And whenever you get pure, you'll take the shower, even if you're still in the state of ihram and it's still the days of ihram, you'll take the shower and everything and just be extremely careful not to break your hair. Another point to mention is that if you are if you get it later on, for example, and then it's time to leave Mecca and you still have your period, the tawaf al-wada will be dropped. You won't have to do tawaf al-wada. That's okay. You won't be held blameworthy or anything like that. And lastly, I know I mentioned this earlier, but a woman can perform sa'i while in her menses. So for example, if you've already done the tawaf ifada, and then before you're able to make the sa'i, you get your period, you can actually go ahead and still make the sa'i because it's not a requirement for sa'i for you to be pure. So if somebody broke their wudu or was in a state of janaba during the sa'i, they could still perform it. So the same way, but if you're in your period, you can still perform the sa'i. That is according to the Hanafiya. They say that the Ahnaf, Imam Hanifa, they say that, you know, once the tawaf is done, you can actually perform your sa'i in the state of in the state of having your period. And he basically is saying that you have to do it after the tawaf. According to the other imams, they actually allow that while you're on your period, you can do your sa'i, and once you get off your period, then you can make your tawaf. So changing the order a little bit, where you bring the sa'i first and the tawaf later. A little point of contention there, but either way, you can perform your sa'i while you're on your period. All right, so moving on, the main thing that we want to talk about, right, when we talk about having your period during Hajj is tawaf al-ifada, because like I said, the other rites of Hajj, inshallah, you'll be able to do them as normal. Of course, leaving out, you know, the things which are not allowed for you to do during your period, like praying the 5 times and praying the nawafil and things. You'll do other things that are allowed, like making dua, dhikr, engaging in good talks, etc. So talking about the tawaf al-ifada, the tawaf al-ifada is mandatory to complete. You must complete it. It's not like tawaf al-wada where it'll get dropped. No, even if you get your period, you must do your tawaf al-ifada. In fact, you can't exit the state of ihram until the tawaf al-ifada is done, right? And like I said, I don't want to go too much into things that have been covered, but it is one of the main requirements to ensure that you can actually get out of the state of ihram. So you must do your tawaf al-ifada. And if you leave without performing your tawaf al-ifada, you will continue to be in the state of ihram. Even if you went all the way back to America, even if you came all the way back home, right? You would still be in the state of ihram because you cannot exit the state of ihram without doing the tawaf. It's one of the requirements. And so in order to get out of the state of ihram, you'd have to come back to Makkah, make the tawaf, and then you can get out of the state of ihram. And if a woman were to get out of the state of ihram without doing her tawaf, she's invalidated her Hajj. Your Hajj is no longer valid, and you'd have to go back and redo the entire Hajj. Okay, so this is just to emphasize the importance of tawaf al-ifada. It's extremely important, and it's unlike the other tawafs, which can be dropped because of your period. No, this one you must do regardless. Okay, so I just want to make sure that that's very clear for everyone. There is an option in tawaf al-ifada. You can do it on the 10th, you can do it on the 11th, you can do it on the 12th. So there's like, you know, we have, alhamdulillah, the leeway of doing it a little bit later. If there's more crowding the first day, we can do it on the second day. If it's still crowded on the second day, we can delay it to the third day, like that. But if you're in Hajj and you fear or you think that I'm going to get my period soon, don't delay it. Go ahead right away on the 10th, as soon as you've stoned, inshallah, go right away and make your tawaf. So that way it's done, you know, and then you don't have to worry about, I have my period, I have to stay, I have to do this, I have to do that. Which things I'll mention as just in the next slide. But you don't want to delay that, inshallah. So if you don't already have your period, do it right away. Now, if you do have your period, what does that look like? Well, essentially, if you have your period, you have 3 options regarding doing the tawaf. The first one is the most preferred choice, meaning it's the most preferable. And this is the thing that, you know, all of the scholars will guide towards, is to delay the tawaf until the end of Hajj, meaning until you become clean from your period. So if you're in, you know, this obviously depends on the package that you're in. Some people have a few days even after Hajj where they're going to be staying in Makkah. Others have a few days where they'll be going to Medina, whatever the case is. If you have time after Hajj and you're certain your period will be done, you can actually delay it till you're out of your period. And then once your period finishes and you make the ghusl, the shower, to become pure, then you go and do your tawaf. Okay, this is the most preferred choice. However, with the way flight paths are, the way packages are, and things are, this isn't always optimal. This isn't always possible, right? So the other options, this is something the second option is something I personally shy away from, but I just want to let you know that it is an option, is to use medical pills to stop your period, and then, highlight it at the discretion of your doctor. Anytime something like this comes up, I do want to emphasize and make sure that everyone understands this is extremely important to have your doctor on board and to make sure that whatever you're taking is okay for you to take. And so once you take those pills and the bleeding ends, you may take your ghusl shower, perform your tawaf, right? What I do want to also again point out is this is not mandatory. Islam is not telling you must do it. The scholars are not telling you that you must go take these pills. I'm just saying it's an option that you have. The better option is actually to wait it out, your natural period. Whenever it ends, you take the shower and you go make the tawaf. But if you are, wanting to take the pills, it is allowed. Okay? And then lastly, and this is all quite often the case, which ends up happening for a lot of people, including myself. I've been in this position before, which is to do the tawaf in the state of menses, to do it while you're still on your period, because you're going to be leaving Makkah at a time when you're still in your period. So waiting wouldn't change that, and so you'd have to just make the tawaf while you're in your period. This choice has been allowed in this day and age by the ulama, by the scholars, because of the difficulty of, prolonging your stay. If your package has written for you to go back on the 20th and your period runs after that, you have to go back on the 20th. So you're allowed to go ahead and do the tawaf even while you're in your period. And there's two opinions regarding this. The first is that of Imam Abu Hanifa, where he says, your tawaf will be done. Alhamdulillah, you're good. Your Hajj is done. You can get out of the state of haram. You don't have to come back or redo anything, but you will have to pay a penalty, a dam, which is sacrificing a large animal in the haram. It's very easy to do nowadays. You just give the money for it and they do the dam for you. The second opinion of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah is that there's no dam because it's not your fault, right? It's just the days of the way everything worked out. You have to do it you have to do the tawaf, which you're not supposed to do while you're impure. So you'll go ahead and do your tawaf and you will not need to pay them. And these same three rulings apply to the tawaf in the umrah as well. So if you needed to go ahead and, you've already put the ihram on for the umrah, then you need to go ahead and do that. You can take any one of these three, either wait out your period and then make the umrah, take the pills, or do it while in the state of menses, and then decide whether or not to give the penalty. My personal advice here for the sisters is that from now, I would highly recommend going ahead and starting to track your period, track the days that you're bleeding, because oftentimes the days and the dates in which you're bleeding actually make a difference in the ruling that you'll be given regarding whether or not you'll be considered pure or impure. And so my biggest advice is we still have some time to go until Hajj starts. And even if you're not concerned that, oh, these aren't the days that I usually am bleeding, still go ahead, track your period, whether it's a tracker app or writing it down or however you like to do it, track those days and those dates, the start and end dates, things like that, because that will affect, once you get there, if you were to start your bleeding, how we will look at that bleeding, right? So sometimes these people who they say, these aren't my dates at all. I wasn't supposed to be on my period on these dates at all. It's, completely off. A lot of the times it happens, whether it's travel or whatnot, that the days do go up or down. That's natural as well. It's normal. So because of that, even if you don't fear that, these are my days that I'm supposed to get my period, or I might get my period on these days, etc., still go ahead and start tracking from now. And if you're tracking from before, that's even better, inshallah. But definitely track down your the bleeding you have from today till the start of Hajj, or till the start of the trip. That way, once you get there, I didn't go too much into the details of like how exactly we will look at the days and the rulings, because I want to allow everyone during the Q&A to ask personal questions, inshallah. So with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you for your time. I hope, inshallah, this was beneficial to you. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts from us, from our brothers, inshallah, from our families, and it allows us to have the most spiritually productive and spiritually reformative trip, inshallah, and accepts all of our Hajj. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.
Prepare for the transformative journey of a lifetime. Visit our website and follow us for more information.